Okay.
השבעתי אתכם בנות ירושלים בצבאות או בעילות השדה אם תעירו ואם תעוררו את האהבה עד שתחפץ מזאת עולה מן המדבר כתמרות עשן מקוטרת מור ולבונה מכל אבקת רוכל הנה מיתתו של שלמה 60 גיבורים סביב לה מגיבורי ישראל כולם אחוזי חרב מלומדי מלחמה איש חרבו על ירחו מפחד בלילות הפריון עשה לו המלך שלמה מעצי הלבנון עמודיו עשה כסף רפידתו זהב מרכבו ארגמן תוכו רצוף אהבה מבנות ירושלים.
Wow. David, thank you for sharing that. What an incredible piece of media to start with. Shalom and welcome everybody to People on the Path. I want to thank our guest, David Israel Katz, for welcoming all of us with that incredible video. And I'm so curious, and we will explore more about what you had created and where that was and what exactly was happening. So David, I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and I will invite you back in just a few moments. My name is Adam Lowy, and I am the lifelong learning Moreh Derech at Beth Sholom. Each month, I will welcome dynamic guests to discuss, learn, and consider what it means to be on the path. How does an individual's choices impact their path? How do the various communities that an individual participates in change their lives forever? What unsuspecting moments became the powerful ones that inform personal and professional journeys? Where does one's relationship to their Jewish identity take surprising turns, and how does it spiritually manifest? I intend for this conversation to be intimate, unscripted, and informal. The possibilities and potential will be infinite. The directions, ways, and paths will be explored, discovered, and open. So please, come take a walk with me as we welcome Shabbat with People on the Path. This month's guest is a wonderful, talented, and passionate person. David Israel Katz is the music maestro and an educator for Beth Shalom's Shabbat school and Hebrew school, and he's so much more than those things. David's been an integral part of the Bay Area Jewish scene for a couple of decades, I believe. So what brought him here? What was his Jewish experience growing up in Israel? How does David express his Jewish self today? And what does that mean for the students and families that he learns with? We will explore these questions and more on today's People on the Path. Now, before I bring David back in, I want to bring in Rabbi Eng as our consistent part of this program, is just to try to check in every week or every time that we do this People on the Path.
Shabbos.
And I will just be transparent here that we are recording this on a day that's not Friday because of our challenges of this time of year. We aren't going to be posting this live streaming. We are going to be recording this and giving it to the community in a few days. So it's Tuesday right now.
I'm looking forward to this, people on the path, because David was one of the names this is a great idea, when you came up with this idea, which was, how do I find people who are just on their own journey, on their own paths and connecting to Judaism or to spirit? And how do we find a way to just validate that and bring them a part of our community? I said, talk to David, because I've always been interested, as a lot of people know here, in sound. We've got a program with Jeremiah Lockwood called Listen. And I know that David has played with the power of sound to influence people. And I'm excited for this one. This was one of my suggested guests. So I'll be here on the sidelines, and I look forward to this conversation.
Okay, but before you run away, real quick, Rabbi Aid, I just want to see how you're doing. Thanksgiving, it's not a Jewish holiday, as we know, but it's coming. It's Thursday. This is not a typical heading into Thanksgiving experience that we're all in. How are you finding a little bit of gratitude right now? How are you recognizing the good during all these challenging times?
I mean, I think we're completely blessed and privileged here at the Ain residence, and we're just overwhelmed by those blessings. When you look at the state of the world, how many people have been ill or suffering and who don't have the blessings that we share here in this community, it really compels us forward. And I'm excited because the community has really been very powerful, very loud, very gelling towards going out and really coming together and finding a way to just share this path and other paths with people, and out to do good and to sort of repair the world to the best of our abilities. So yeah, I'm thankful a million times over for my wife and for my children and for our health and for this community and for this position and for this weather. And I could go on forever with all the things I'm grateful for. And we certainly have tefillot to remind us of that. So I don't want to undercut it. Your question. It's very important that we stop and take a moment and have a meal and say what we're thankful for. But I know for a lot of us, we're overwhelmed by our privileges and our blessings. And I know that you have been spearheading this community towards beginning to share those blessings with other people. And I want to continue doing that. One way to do that is to open up people's minds about what Judaism can even be, what the ritual, what the texts can mean. I mean, to watch that video of David with the Shurim is it's like, you can do that with text. You can create, that's great. Let's blow all of that up and let's find meaning together as a community.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you are overflowing with blessings. I also feel the same. And I want to dig in with David because that was amazing, that video. So David, can you come back? Let's break it down.
Yes, I can.
And Rabbi Aim, we'll come back to you in a little bit. I know that you'll have questions for David. David, we've talked about this for a little while, and I'm so glad that we're finally here together doing this and having this conversation. Thank you so much for coming.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me to do this.
Before we kind of jump into what that was that you showed us, because that was just fascinating. And yes, I think as Rabbi Ain stated that I think that probably people who just watch that and never seen anything of that type are probably a bit shocked, almost wondering what really that's allowed. You can chant text and burn it at the same time, and then the sirens in the background. I mean, there was so many layers of that that were incredible. Before we dig in, how are you doing? How are you handling and managing the state of our world?
I'm doing pretty well. I think that I share in the privilege that Rabbi Ain was just mentioning, and everybody is healthy. I think like many other people right now, I am feeling the various sensations and feelings that are involved with a kind of change in consciousness, something. The way reality is happening around me right now has me question, my own footing in actually what's real. How do I know what I know? How do I relate to others? What is it to be human in this moment? We've talked about this in the context of teaching and learning with other people. We're used to being in person. Now we're communicating over these digital media that in some ways keep us very far apart, and in other ways actually bring us closer than we would otherwise be. So naturally, there's a feeling of disorientation that comes with that, and from that disorientation, there's this imperative to actually find out, okay, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing? How am I doing those things?
Yeah. So, David, you you kind of mentioned that you're in the midst of this shift of consciousness, or kind of your notion of even reality at this time, and I just, from that video. Okay, that was in Israel, if I'm not mistaken. That video was shot, and so this must have been pre-COVID that video was done, and so my question is, like, to me, like, you've been on this path not just since COVID, this notion of kind of reinterpreting consciousness and kind of really playing with reality. And so can you explain a little bit about, like, what got you to that moment to create that video, or create that event? Give us a little background to that video.
Yes. The story of what got me to do that is a little bit longer, and I don't know if we actually have the scope right here to tell that whole story. I can tell you about that event. The event took place in Jerusalem in a festival that's held every year by an art school in Musrara called Musrara Michlelet Musrara, I think Musrara School of Art.
You can say it in Hebrew, it's okay.
And so they hold a festival, an art festival every year with different kinds of art are shown there. I took place in the performance part of the festival with a few other artists, some of them local to Israel. I think most of them were actually coming from different places internationally. And I wanted to burn a Jewish book. This was the festival took place, I believe it was mid-May, and the theme of that year's festival, I think it was 2018, I believe that it was, and the theme was displacement. And I thought about what it is to perform a text, and I thought, oh, if I want to burn a Jewish book in Jerusalem, then which book should it be? And Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, was actually the natural choice for that. Not only because some of its explicit references to fire, and to fire as the expression of ultimate divine love, but also because it is all fire, right? In maybe less explicit ways too. And I made this ritual in which for 3 nights, for 3 nights of the festival, I sat on that platform and wrote out the text on that long ribbon of paper. And on the third night, I rose and lit the fire and chanted the book while burning it. And of course, when if anytime I burn a book, especially if it's a Jewish book, I have to hearken back to the 1933 ritual book burnings in Germany that were held by the German Student Union at that time, controlled by the Nazis, and that. So the idea here was also to at least attempt to reappropriate that act to blend the murderous and the erotic and the devotional all together in in one artistic act. Yeah.
Wow. So, David, I feel like we kind of like quickly jumped in and we kind of almost entered the middle of this conversation by going immediately to this, and I want to take this opportunity to kind of acknowledge that we're gonna get back to fire, because your fire is definitely a theme that is important to you, clearly from that video and also from the name of I don't know how to describe your performance art kind of ritual. I don't know what you call it. Is it a organization, a company,
well, it is somewhat organized, but it's not an organization. It's an ongoing art project that's often collaborative, but always somehow with me either as directing or in some kind of way, and more recently, specifically centered on Jewish text.
So what I'm alluding to is something called Foreign Fire that we'll dig into in a little bit with David. But before we got in, I think let's take some steps back to understand how you arrived to this beautiful spot that you're sitting in today in San Francisco. And we've gotten to know each other a little bit over these last 3 or 4 months as I stepped into my role at Beth Sholom, and you were on staff in the Shabbat school. And I actually, when I realized who you were, I realized that I knew you a little bit through your work at Or Shalom, and that when I took my kids to some young Rosh Hashanah events back a few years ago when they were young, real young, and we were kind of searching around for all kinds of high holiday options. And so, I've quickly learned in these few months that we have been working together in the Shabbat school that that your approach is not come from any specific curriculum, that you have spent a lifetime of kind of creating what Jewish means to you and how to bring it to the children you work with and the families you work with. And so I want to know, like, what happened to you in your youth? Like, what was life like in Israel for you growing up? Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what was like Jewish life like for you and your family growing up?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question with a potentially very long answer. So feel free to cut me anytime. Basically, I grew up until age 11 in a very small town in the Judean foothills near Rehovot. And my school experience there was a kind of a standard small town public school experience in Israel in the 1980s, which meant that, as part of my regular subjects was also Torah was one of the regular subjects. So we learned stories from Genesis and from Numbers, and and we also later on also went into some later scriptures, and then so that was school. And at home, I grew up in a secular family with parents who we celebrated holidays, but we never really went to synagogue or anything like that. And there was a very clear socially. There was a very clear distinction between who's a religious person and who is not. And those lines were seldom crossed, and when they were crossed, usually it was permanent. You know, someone maybe had grown up in a religious family and left that, and that means that they, at a certain point, pivoted and started leading a secular life. And some, depending on what kind of community they came from, they may have had to actually cut ties with their parents, or not, and vice versa. People who grew up in a secular environment, if they for some reason decided that they wanted to practice Judaism in some kind of way, often that would take them down roads that would separate them from their communities of origin. So that was kind of my childhood. I spent my teens and very early 20s in Tel Aviv, thinking very little about Judaism and about Jewish heritage material in any kind of any kind of sort. But towards 98, 99, those interests started coming in. I think
in Tel Aviv.
In Tel Aviv.
In Tel Aviv, of all places. Interesting.
Yeah, because I was studying voice with a wonderful teacher in Tel Aviv, Naama Ganot, and I was getting a little bit into early what's called early music, early European Western music. I was singing some Monteverdi, I was singing some English lute songs, things like that. And my teacher was telling me, there are these musicologists who are saying that actually the beginnings of musical notation in the late, in the Middle Ages in Europe actually originate, or maybe are rooted in scriptural trope, the way it's sung in synagogues today. And I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And actually, that interest in the music of Jewish text and the text of Jewish music and the intertwining of all of those worlds kept alive until today. And actually, kind of when I look back, I see, oh yeah, that those origins are already there at the time when I was about like 17, 18 and started to study voice and do all that stuff.
So you were deep into music, would you say, before you kind of really started to think about how to combine it with your Jewish self? Would you say that's an accurate description?
Yeah. Certainly, the music was the primary interest. Yes.
So when I did a little, when I asked Rav Google about David Israel Katz, and I learned that you, and this is quote unquote, fronted legendary Israeli post-rock band, the Fluorescence.
Yes.
That you sang with the Israeli Philharmonic, that you produced music for television, and you were also coaching high schoolers in musical theater. Can you tell us a little bit about the Fluorescence?
The Fluorescence was in Hebrew, Lakat HaZoharim, was a band that was active in Tel Aviv between 94 and 99, or actually even a little bit later. We still performed a couple of times after I had already moved here. And released one album in 1999, and I can, it was a rock and roll band. It was myself and Ram Gabay and Yanai Nir playing drums and bass, and we had a great time. and I can show you a little bit.
Yeah, would you? That'd be great.
Sure. I suppose I can play for you. I'll play a couple of maybe part of a track here from our album. Maybe I'll even share that screen while I'm doing that. It's just it's there on Apple Music and Spotify, places like that. You can find it.
It's gonna be when crimson-colored butterflies light the New York City skies. Autumn's chilly gusts will then drive our souls over on to unknown dwellings thresholds. Satisfy their gluttony and calm addictions gaily crave. I'll grab a
Yeah, so you're getting an idea.
So were you doing all as the Fluorescence? Were you doing all your songs in English?
No, it was kind of a mix, but it was mostly in English. Yeah, we were, orienting towards the international ear. And it's interesting, actually, back then, there were still a lot of people in Tel Aviv who were criticizing us for that, which is kind of funny. Thinking about it, I mean, it was funny to us then, and it's even funnier now when there are so many Israeli projects that are actually happening in English and are recognized and mainstream and everything.
So ahead of your time, I will say no doubt, and that I certainly appreciate about you. And so you're in the Fluorescence as you were simultaneously having voice lessons with this person that then kind of told you about that blending or that kind of the crossing over, and so you're simultaneously in this rock band as you kind of had this what I'm assuming is kind of a grand realization of that opened up some possibilities to you, and so and then you also said that you returned to Israel for some performances. So why did you leave Israel, and how was that all a part of this kind of this collision of a couple of your passions?
Yeah, it was all a part of this collision of all of these passions, for sure. The question, why did I leave Israel, I think is kind of like, I mean, aren't there enough reasons to leave Israel? I don't know exactly what it's like, so, okay, my children have grown up in this country, but I really don't know what it's like to have grown up here. And what is American, the American Jews' attitude towards Israel is kind of like it's a mystery to me. So I find it hard to, I don't know exactly how to answer that question, but suffice to say, buses were blowing up through the 90s in Tel Aviv, the same ones that I would take to school. I mean, I didn't really think about that as traumatic or anything like that until I had already lived here for maybe 10 years, But yeah, so reasons to leave Israel are not in they're not scarce. And then, of course, living here, and this is something that I can speak to a lot. my relationship to Judaism completely changed by finding myself here, and with a name like David Katz, that kind of like everybody, when I introduced myself to people as David Katz, they would immediately categorize me as Jewish American, and which is not who I am, right? So I kind of had to work through that and see, oh yeah, first of all, I'm not Jewish American, or I wasn't yet then, at least. Now I'm thinking about myself that way more. Um, and then also, oh, I suppose I'm Jewish, and that's kind of like that was certainly a realization and a kind of collision to actually all of a sudden be thrown into this place in which, unlike in Israel, where Israelis can kind of like forget that they're Jewish, and basically live life as if they're just citizens of a state, and still friends of mine, people my age and younger, would say that they identify as Israeli more than they do as Jewish.
Yeah.
And certainly my work with Judaism, with Jewish heritage materials, with myself, with my relationship to the place that I'm living in and people around me, has been largely about exactly that.
So, is Israel your middle name, or did you kind of adopt that as you realized that people were kind of assuming that you were just an American Jew and that they were not recognizing the Israel that was a part of you? Is that how you added that to your name?
No, it was given to me at birth. That's my name is David Israel Katz legally. I don't mind sharing with you the process. At first, when I just landed in the U.S., I started calling myself Kohen Tzedek, breaking up the Katz acronym into its two constituent words.
Wow.
And that worked for a while. And then that kind of like stopped working for me. And I just went back to David Katz. I still introduce myself as David. People who know me personally call me David, but I don't mind David either. And more recently, I started calling myself formally David Israel Katz, which feels right now.
So I always refer to you as David Israel Katz. So I appreciate that you've given me a background to this, and I hope that it's okay that I do refer to you as David Israel Katz.
Yeah.
And again, like this, I keep, like in our work together, and even in just this conversation today, like your choice of words is really critical to what you do. Like it's nothing. I feel like nothing that comes out of your mouth is arbitrary. It's thoughtful. There's a reason that you choose the words that you choose, and the story about your name in itself kind of illustrates that. And then as I said, we're going to kind of come back to this idea of foreign fire, right? This thing. I'm just going to call it a thing that you are a part of. And again, like you kind of talked about fire. So how did you choose foreign fire? And how does that kind of encapsulate the work, the effort, the love that you do in that work?
Yeah. So the name Foreign Fire is a biblical reference to any kind of forbidden kind of worship. You can find it in different places, notably the story, for example, of Nadav and Avihu is the two sons of Aaron who offer this extra offering of incense, and are burned on the spot. So the reference is a reference to a kind of Jewish hereticism or heresy, I suppose. I don't know. Is that how you say it in English?
Yeah, I
Maybe
think so.
both. Maybe both exist. At any rate, I suppose the idea is that there's well, I mean, I was I was interested in um, in the untold part of the story and what happens to these figures that are that in the outward narrative are actually um, left out at a certain point.
Mm.
And what is it that they did? What were they looking for? And that kind of uh, uh, desire to come close and to come close with other people, to come close with the divine, that kind of desire that drives ritual to its end.
So, when like at what point in this in your path did you decide to be an educator? Like to me, that's not as clear as kind of your connection to music, and then kind of just your kind of realizing the possibilities for your own kind of expression. But when did you also decide to become an educator, and how did that also kind of how did that all converge with your music and with your new kind of learning about Jewish education and just kind of Jewish identity?
Um, I wouldn't say that I decided to become an educator. I would say that it actually was decided for me in many ways, and both as a Jewish teacher and as a music teacher, I feel that I've always felt that teaching is part of the practice, and that without teaching, actually the practice doesn't really mean very much to me.
Mm.
And it has been my primary way of learning.
Mm. So did you when you left Israel, did you immediately come to the Bay Area?
Yes.
And what drew you to the Bay Area in particular?
My then wife had family here.
And so when you got to the Bay Area, what did you like? How did you make your way? What did you do when you first got here? How did you make a living? Did you go to school here?
Yeah, I made a living building props for theater, and what was the second question?
Yeah. How, did you go to school here as well? I
Yeah, I
think.
did go to school here. Yes, I went to I I ended up finishing my bachelor's at CIIS, and then I studied composition and improvisation at Mills College.
Okay, and so David, when we were we were having staff orientation for the Shabbat school staff before we started the school year, I asked you all to prepare to tell us about a kind of a most influential teacher. Can you tell us about that teacher? And because I'm wondering, I kind of know what your answer is, but I want to know, like, what did this teacher that you're about to tell us about? How did that person impact you when you got to the Bay Area?
All right. So you're referring to Cantor Julius Blackman, who passed away just a couple of years ago. He was 104, I think. Maybe I think he made it to 104 before he passed away. I was back then. We're talking about 2000. Pursuing my fairly new interest in traditional Jewish music. I was looking for someone who could teach me Jewish liturgical music, cantorial singing. And through a couple of phone calls and emails, I was directed to Julius Blackman, who said, "Yeah, I will teach you." He was already in his 80s, and we would meet once a week for a while, for a couple of years, and he basically taught me how to lead a Jewish service, and also, told me stories about his histories here in LA and with his teachers. And one of well, yeah, I mean, he was impactful in so many ways. One of the most impactful moments that I remember from him, I forget what it is that I was singing for him, but he said, "Yeah, you can do it. You can sing it dry like that, or you can, you can let it live. You can you can bring some juice into it." And that stayed with me, and I think that I'm still working on it. I don't think I've I haven't
You're still
completed my
squeezing.
task yet.
You're still squeezing the juice. You're still squeezing the juice. I love it. I love that. At his age, he said that to you. I love that he was like, "Where's like the ruach? Like, bring the spirit." Like, and so, all right. So then, like, all right. So I mean, I would love to have been like in the room to watch the two of you just be together, because I'm assuming that he saw something in you. Like, he saw this spark in you that I'm sure was, again, based on how you speak about your path. Like, none of this was kept hidden. Like, when you found something, when something is kind of emerging in you, I feel like it comes and it's there and you're going to explore it. And I was also looking at your website, and I think that this is just awesome. Again, and kind of like how you approach things. It says your website has a quote from Haaretz, which says, "It's clear that Katz practices whatever this thing is that he's doing for hours and years. It's clear that he really doesn't care what anyone would think about him, and it's clear that he is an uber performer." So with that said, I want to bring in Rabbi Ain. Rabbi Ain, are you still with us?
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, not only am I still with you, you guys could keep going for another 2 hours, and I would still be listening, because this is, I mean, let me tell you, it is Tuesday. He's correct, but I feel like it's Shabbat now, because that's the kind of conversation I felt like I sort of migrated into a nice, wonderful Shabbat, lazy, early afternoon there as you guys were talking. So thank you.
So Rabbi Ain, as I kind of shared that quote from Haaretz, and I love it. Like, to me, I feel like that, it says that he doesn't really care what anyone would think about him, and I think that does not give you the credit that you deserve, because I think that you are very, very thoughtful about what people think about you, meaning in what you do, right, in the decisions that you make and how you express yourself. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and that and the notion of, I don't know when this was written, this quote, but the notion of you being an uber performer, like, to me, is also takes away from who I understand who you are. Like, it's not a performance. What you're doing, it's not a performance.
That's because you haven't seen me improvise solo voice. I might be able to share a snippet of a video. If you'd like, I can do that right now, actually.
Let's do a snippet, and then I know Rabbi Ain has some questions that he wants to ask.
Let's see here. Actually, yeah. Let me set that up first, and then we can maybe. Oh, here, actually, I found it. Here we go. I'll just share that screen real quick. I mean, I suppose that was already enough, but you might want to see. Do you want to see more? Is
No, let's go to conversation because I'm sure Rabbi Ain is chomping at the bit here.
Well, I have too many questions. So, I mean, first of all, just wonderful questions, and I'm really fascinating. I love the way that David sort of shared his name and his journey. I have a lot of questions, and I was thinking, as you guys were talking, how do I narrow it down? Because I know Adam's only going to give me one question. So, what I want to ask David is, I'm still struck by, you said, I wanted to burn a Jewish book. That was a quote that I took from you. I wanted to burn a Jewish book. So I put that in quotes in my notes. It seems that's an interesting quote. Someone who has a strong desire to burn a Jewish book. And then you acknowledge sort of the Shoah. And you said you wanted to reappropriate that act. Okay, so what is it about the burning of a book that one, I guess, would want to reappropriate? And then the secondary to that question is it because there is something inherently limiting about text itself that you feel that the fire is bound to the text itself and you're trying to release the fire? So I have a whole bunch of philosophical follow-ups, but let's just begin with what would lead someone to want to burn a Jewish book?
Right. I think the answer to all of those questions that you just asked is maybe actually be one answer. The text burning, especially when it comes to Song of Songs, but also, I mean, burning is in that case it was burning, you know. But you can also think about the act of burning as metaphorical for any other kind of fulfillment of the text, right? And the idea there was, that in that case, it was fulfilling the text. That was the performance of the text, and to bring it to its fulfillment was to also destroy it. And it kind of like also underlined the idea that a reading is a momentary act, that the reading happens now, and that performing the text happens now, and then it's gone, it's up in smoke. And that might, and of course, that's what would have happened in any kind of sacrificial situation. And, life is being brought into its fulfillment by being physically destroyed. So there's that. And when I take that as a Jewish person in the holy city, when I take that act into my own, when I take ownership of that act, then I'm reappropriating. I'm rearranging the power situation towards Jewish fulfillment, or at least that's how I would describe it. And another side of it is just the principle of transgression, and that ritual, in order to actually work, needs to include some kind of a transgressive component. If there's no transgression, then one did not really do very much, or maybe even nothing at all. The transgression can take different kinds of different forms, and it can be very internal, or it can involve a relational situation. But it kind of has to be there in order for ritual to actually take place.
One of our congregants, Stuart Blutcher, actually was privileged. He took me to meet Cantor Julius Blackman before he passed away. So I actually got to sit with Cantor Blackman and get to know him a little bit. And I just want to, his his note to you, if I'll call it a note, his note to you seems really relevant here. So I have a good friend, Archie Rand, he's a painter, and we've talked a lot about the creative process. And he said to me, Dan, he goes, you've got a problem I don't have. He goes, look, I can go up into my studio and I can paint 100 canvases, and then I'll die and whatever. I still painted. I still have participated in the creative act. I'm still an artist. He goes, you're a rabbi, you need an audience. And you can't do your artwork without recognition that there is an audience in front of you. And so when I hear Julie Cantor Blackman talk to you about, are you a performer or are you putting your juice into the tefillot, I think that's right on point, which is to a certain extent bringing your fire to be the shot. When you take on that role of the shaliach tzibur, then you're being asked to do something. You're being asked to do something that is not of your own volition. That's not all about what your art and the purity to your art. And so I guess I'm wondering a little bit about that. How do you reconcile those two? Do you? And do those tensions still sit within you? It would be my question.
Yeah, those tensions are always present in any kind of performative situation. And that it brings me actually to thoughts on the current moment in terms of the shift in media that we are all experiencing and that the Jewish world is experiencing. So as the way I view the art of the cantor is to actually apply aesthetic power within the ritual environment. So because it's really because art is actually the umbrella. It's actually larger. It's larger than religion. It's larger than any religion. It's a much more primary, primordial force. Yeah. And religion, religious ritual actually receives its power from art, you know. So it's a category of art, and so that's the work of the cantor, is to bring to bring religious ritual into the service of art, and through aesthetic power, through applying aesthetic power. When the religious ritual is devoid of aesthetic power, then actually when the religious ritual refuses to serve the greater artistic purpose, then it loses its aesthetic power and also its ritual power. So that's how I see that relationship, and I'm pointing it out specifically in the cultural and new media contexts that we're in right now, because I think that within this context now, that whole relationship is being reconsidered. Yeah.
So David, and so totally right. Like based on how everything in the media and kind of just technology and being kind of stuck in our own spaces right now and not being able to be together. And so I'm bringing this back to what you do at Beth Sholom, which is an educator of young children, of primarily 6th and 7th graders. And so how are you bringing the juice and the fire to those kids through the screen right now? How are you giving them kind of that description that you just kind of broke down for us?
So I'm doing my best to include them in my own inquiry about what, how what is it to do Jewish ritual right now, and through on these platforms, and I do my best to learn from them about how to use these tools. And so we learn together about how, what are actually the unique possibilities that are present in the situation that we're in, rather than trying to create ways of relating that cannot ever happen over this medium. Can we instead find out what is possible? Certain things are possible in here that in digital space that are not possible in person. And it's our job to find those out and find out how those can be of service to our Jewish purposes, namely to be free people, to be compassionate, to take part in creation, those kinds of things.
David, I'm so grateful for you, and I am, and I don't know if the kids that cross your path quite understand all that you're bringing, and I assume one day they will, because it's so in depth, and it's beautiful, and it's thoughtful, and it's really again that piece of you kind of learning along with them, alongside them, this notion of inquiry as a collective group, rather than you're as the one who's got the information and I'm going to tell you how to be and how to live your Jewish life. I love it, and it so beautifully fits with my approach about learning, and I know it also fits with Rabbi Ain's just notion of how we should be considering what a Jewish life can be. And so I know Rabbi Ain just disappeared because I think he thought I was going to go, and I just wanted to say, Rabbi Ain, did you have any more follow-up, anything else before we dig into the people on the path speed round of questions that
I have a ton more follow-up, and I want to encourage David and everybody who's watching this, people on the path, to follow up. This is a part of our mission. And I've been a little bit frustrated when people think about the thinking a pre-COVID mindset. I think what David began with, talking about a shift in consciousness, I think is right on. And I think that shift in consciousness is going to go towards what are the real ways we can utilize these tools, as opposed to the ways that we're just trying to appropriate what was worked in an old medium and put it onto a new medium, as opposed to truly understanding what this medium can be. And then how do we get some of that fire? I mean, I think when he speaks about the creativity, the artistry that we feel inside of our hearts, that inevitably gets cooled down. I mean, I think of a wonderful painting in my head, and then I try to put it into a piece of paper. Let me tell you, it's much less exciting when it's on a piece of paper than where it is in my heart. And I think there's something inevitably about trying to put down this fire that is really interesting and connected historically to what Jews have always been. We've had a Torah Shabbat and a Torah Shabbat Peh. Now, at some point, it says in the Talmud, you're not supposed to write, which means, sorry, I'll translate, a written Torah and an oral Torah. And at some point, it says, do not write down the oral Torah. And it says that written down in the Talmud. Do not write it down. And I think what David is tapping into, or at least what I get from it, is this cooling of the creative spirit that sits in the heart of us once something becomes formalized, once it becomes dogmatic, once it becomes put down into a text or a piece of paper, you lose track of the spirit. And you can turn that thing itself into an idol. And to me, that's really the Avodah Zarah. If we want to go back to Avodah Zarah, it's to think that a particular text has holy power in and of itself, as opposed to who we are in relationship to that text. Was that short enough for you, Adam? So thank you for this. I very much want to continue the conversation, and I would love to have the three of us and the congregation begin to build out the rituals to whatever they might be into this next decade.
Thank you, Rabbi Ain, for adding these layers, and yes, for feeling what I feel when I interact with David as well. And yeah, this has been fascinating, and I think there's a lot of potential directions for us to go as educators. And I say that in quotes because of how I think both you and I feel about kind of what is the role of the educator. And so I'm very much looking forward to the potential, the possibilities. I know Rabbi Ain and I will kind of dissect this conversation and think about ways to continue to bring you into the community, and also to embrace kind of these bold steps that you're taking. And so, David, the way that People on the Path ends usually is a speed round of some questions that I ask. And I ask kind of all the guests these same questions, and just curious to hear your answers. So are you ready for some People on the Path speed round questions?
Sure.
All right. So what are 5 necessities that you must have with you on the path?
Yeah. I need a tikkun. I need chocolate. Tea probably also. I need a record player and my record collection. Is that one thing or 2 things?
Yeah, we'll count that as one.
Yeah.
So it's heavy though. It's going to be heavy on the path.
Heavy. Yeah, and I need some kind of a stringed instrument. I'm not picky. A guitar would be great, but.
And for can you define tikkun for us? What did that mean to you?
Oh, I was talking specifically about a book that has the Torah written in it, dotted and voweled on one side, and bare as it appears on the scroll on the other side.
Excellent. So we've definitely bonded over music. What album would you take with you on the path? I know you said you're going to bring your whole collection, but if you actually had to pick one album.
If I had to pick one album, it would be for sure My Bloody Valentine, Loveless.
My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. You brought Rabbi Ain back with that. Why, Rabbi Ain? What happened?
That album changed my life. I love that album. Oh my gosh, it's perfect. Oh my God, it's like the most beautiful melodies in this unbelievable wall of sound and electric guitar. It's a classic, beautiful album. Sorry for.
Yeah, it's irresistible. No, it's true.
So, David, if you could walk the path with anybody, they could be past, they could be living, they could be a future version of somebody. Wow. Who would you like to walk the path with?
Whew, that's a very hard question.
Yes.
Wow. Look, they're all imaginary. They're all imaginary people, really. It doesn't matter if it's like Moses or if it's Iggy Pop. It's like, they're all imaginary people. I hope. It's I would want to walk the path with either of them, if they, if it was really them and not like my invention of them.
Moses and Iggy Pop. I love it. Last question. What do you see ahead of you on the path?
Well, so during COVID, I've been making these weekly Torah readings in digital space, exploring exactly those things, what can be done in digital space that maybe can't be done in person ritual space. I can show you one of them. They are actually, yeah, I'll share the screen, but actually, here's this is from last week. ויעתר יצחק לשדי לנוכח אשתו, כי עקרה היא, ויעתר לו שדי, ותהר רבקה אשתו. ויתרוצצו הבנים בקרבה, ותאמר אם כן, למה זה אנוכי, ותלך לדרוש את שדי. ויאמר שדי לה, שני גויים בבטנך, ושני לאומים ממאייך ייפרדו, ולאום מלאום ימץ, ורב יעבוד צעיר. וימלאו ימיה ללדת, והנה תומים בבטנה. So, so my younger son's bar mitzvah is coming up in February. He's not going to celebrate in person. We are not going to celebrate in person with him this year. Hopefully, we can do it next year. But he is going to actually chant for this weekly online series, and that's and including more people his age in that series, and making that space available for kids and families to actually observe coming of age in a Jewish way online, in a way that maybe could realize some, the true potentials of those moments. That's what I see further down the path.
David, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to walk on your path with you today. Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, I hope you have the exact Shabbat experience that you want. I encourage you all to find your footing and balance this Shabbat weekend and beyond. I encourage you to walk your path with courage, wonder, curiosity, and an open mind, body, and spirit, like our guest, David Israel Katz. And so I'm saying Shabbat Shalom, even though I know it's Tuesday. I'm saying Shabbat Shalom. I really am excited to hear about people's feelings about this people on the path. And David, I'm so grateful, and I would just love to ask if you can, kind of knowing that this is going to be viewed on Friday as people head into Shabbat, would you play something for us, kind of guide us or send us into Shabbat? I know that we discussed kind of the technology and all these possibilities that you're creating. With that said, one of my favorite parts of Sunday is how you bring us into Shabbat school and how you take us out of Shabbat school with your most both basic assets, your voice and your guitar. So would you please indulge us with a little Shabbat something? And I'm just going to thank you once again so much for your time today and for being a part of our community. Much respect, kol hakavod, and thank you so much.
הנה זה עומד אחר כותלינו, אחר כותלינו. משגיח מן החלונות, מציץ מן החרקים. באתי לגני, אחותי חלה, אריתי מורי עם בשמי. באתי לגני, אחותי חלה, אריתי מורי עם בשמי. כל דודי דופק פתחי לי, כל דודי דופק פתחי לי, פתחי לי אחותי רעייתי, פתחי לי, פתחי לי. באתי לגני, אחותי חלה, אריתי מורי עם בשמי. באתי לגני, אחותי חלה, אריתי מורי עם בשמי.